Yeah! Okay, let's get cooking!
Since starting Eternal Return, I've played well over 300 games of Xiukai, and several people have DM'd me asking for tips. I got tired of typing out an essay every time, so I've decided to put together a video to explain how to play Xiukai. Xiukai is a character who has a strong early game, a middling mid game, and if played correctly, a ridiculously strong late game. Xiukai is primarily played as a spell amp character, although there are other ways to play him. Xiukai's first passive causes all food and drinks crafted by him to restore 30% more health and SP. His second passive causes him to gain 1, 2, or 3 stacks of Juggernaut Chef depending on what level his passive is whenever he creates an HP or SP recovery item. Each stack of Juggernaut Chef will give him 8 max health and add extra damage to his ultimate. Xiukai's Q is a straight line projectile with a fairly large hitbox that deals high damage and applies a decent slow to the target for 2 seconds. Xiukai's W hits an AoE around himself for decent damage, applying a slow that scales with level. If the target is movement impaired when hit with W, it will deal extra damage equal to a percentage of Xiukai's max HP that scales based on the level of the skill, and the slow will be extended from 1.5 seconds to 4.5 seconds. Xiukai's E causes him to dash in a targeted direction, stopping when hitting a player or animal. When hitting a target, the ability deals good damage. If the target is already movement impaired, when hit, they will take extra damage based on Xiukai's max HP and be knocked airborne for 1 second. Xiukai's ultimate causes him to throw fire out in a wide arc in front of himself 6 times, dealing damage to any enemy hit by it. The damage of each wave is increased by 1 damage for each Juggernaut Chef stack he has gained. Enemies who are movement impaired when hit will also have their defense shredded for 3 seconds. An important thing that's easy to overlook is that all of Xiukai's active abilities cost health instead of SP to cast. When playing any spell amp variant of Xiukai, you'll want to max your ultimate and Q skill before anything else, as Q is your only way to deal damage from range, as well as the slow to set up for all of your other skills. All of Xiukai's abilities other than Q have extra effects that are only activated if the target is already movement impaired in some way. When you can't level your Q or ultimate, you'll want to be putting points into your E. Increasing level of your E will make you deal more damage with your standard combo, as well as make you a lot safer by making the cooldown lower. You'll want to put 1 point into your W before you start farming animals, as storing your W into your combo will help you clear them much faster, as well as allowing your ultimate's defense shredding ability to last beyond the duration of the ultimate. Finally, make sure that you max out your passive before you get to the point in your route where you expect to do a lot of cooking. This can vary depending on your route, so you'll want to run a route a time or two to get a feel for when to level passive and when you'll have inventory space for you to start gathering cooking materials. As a special note, auto attack variants of Xiukai should only be played with daggers, since the base attack speed and stats gained from weapon mastery are wildly better for daggers than spears. When playing an auto attack based variant of Xiukai, you'll want to level in mostly the same way as Amp. Max your Q and ultimate, and make sure you max your passive before you start cooking. You do, however, have the option of maxing your W before your E when playing auto attack. The reason for this is that your W scales up to a 50% slow at max rank. Landing this on an enemy who is already movement impaired will slow them by 50% for 4.5 seconds, which really lets you stick to the target and get your auto attacks in. This does leave you a little more vulnerable, as you won't have your E available as often, but you can use dagger skill as an escape to mitigate that. Are you really doing this again? I mean, I did just eat your whole ultimate.
A new area has been restricted.
I should also note that recently, top-ranked Xiukai players have been using an alternate skill order, maxing their W first, followed by their E, only putting a single point in their Q in order to enable the rest of their kit. This skill order seems like it should work, but I have not had enough time to test it on my own, so I would recommend that you try it out a little bit yourself and see which playstyle feels better for you. Xiukai has one main combo with a couple variations that depend on who you're fighting and what weapon you're using. His primary combo in PvP is to land a Q, then follow up with E to knock them up, then ult them while they're CC'd and unable to dodge. After all of these combos, your Q should be available again, so if they survive, you can throw your Q out at the end to deal some additional damage. If you're playing Spear Xiukai and have your weapon skill unlocked, the combo becomes Q, then E for the knockup, then Spear skill for extra damage and a strong slow, then ult them while slowed. If you're playing Dagger Xiukai, you can use the Dagger skill at the same time you would use Spear skill for some extra burst or to reposition behind your target to get a better position for your ult. Be aware though that this will leave you with few escape options if your target isn't dead, you get third partied, or if you're playing squads and their team decides to focus you. If you're fighting against a tankier opponent who won't likely go down to just the burst from your ultimate, you want to include your W in the combo just before you ult. Making the combo Q, E, W, ult with the option of using your weapon skill just before the ultimate again. The reason you want to use this combo on tankier enemies is that your ultimate only shreds defense on movement impaired targets for 3 seconds. This means that if you just hit them with the Q and E, only the first wave of your ultimate will shred their defense. This means that defense shredding will end when your ultimate ends. If you land the W first, the slow will last for 4.5 seconds, meaning every wave of your ultimate is reapplying the defense shred debuff, and your target's defense will be reduced for 3 seconds after your ultimate ends, allowing you to deal more damage with your follow-up Q. If playing an auto attack variant, it is important to remember for all of these combos that your ultimate will not deal very much damage until you've built up a significant number of stacks. With the recent nerfs dropping his ultimate's damage at level 1 from 50 per wave down to 20 per wave, it may be better at early ranks to simply cancel your ultimate after one wave and go in with auto attacks while the target's defense is reduced. Xiukai's Q, W, and E all have fairly high base damages, as well as the W and E having health scaling, which for the sake of calculating damage is included in the base damage. They also each hit targets a single time. Both of these things mean that percent amp is much more effective at increasing their damage when compared to flat amp. However, Xiukai's ultimate hits 6 times, meaning that any flat amp will be added to the damage 6 times, making it extremely effective at increasing the damage on his ultimate in the early game when its base damage is low. In the early game, getting flat skill amp has a huge effect on your ultimate, which is why most of the time you'll be rushing Fangshan or Mount Slicer as your weapon of choice. However, stacks of Juggernaut Chef are added to the base damage of Xiukai's ultimate. This means that as you stack your passive higher and higher, percent amp becomes more and more effective. Because of this, items with percent amp will be better for you in the late game. Items like Imperial Crown, Imperial Burgeonet, Commander's Armor, and Dropnir are great pickups for a late game Xiukai. Amp builds tend to be low on defense, and because of the way defense is calculated, the 10 defense from Dropnir will pretty much always give you more survivability than the 200 HP on Scotty. In addition, as you hit a higher number of stacks on Juggernaut Chef and level up your ultimate, Dropnir outperforms Scotty in terms of damage as well. Dropnir is also much more consistent to complete since it doesn't require you to contest a Tree of Life in the early game, and for these reasons, I consider Dropnir as best in slot for ARM when playing Amp Xiukai. Flat amp is multiplied by percent amp along with base damage, so it isn't a bad idea to throw in some flat amp early in your accessory slot. Because of this, I tend to build a white crane fan, Schrodinger's box, or Uchiwa in any of my amp builds along with percent amp items. Once you get to the late game, you can try to swap out for a Revenge of Gujin from a body or a chest if you want to go full glass cannon. Xiukai's W and E also have extra damage based on your max HP, so building items that give extra max HP into your build is very good, especially since max HP is already such a valuable stat on its own in Eternal Return. Because of this, items like Imperial Crown that give both max HP and percent amp are very strong on Xiukai. Schrodinger's box giving max HP as well as flat amp is a very strong early game item and is easily built along with motorcycle helmet just between factory and chapel, giving you an option for an early spike in both power and safety. If it fits into your route, sunset armor is also a very strong early game item that is very easy to build. When getting to late game and you've cooked yourself up a lot of passive stacks, you may want to make the choice to switch from items like Imperial Crown and Sunset Armor to items like Imperial Burgeonet and Commander's Armor or Cabana. The increase in max HP from your passive, as well as the health mastery you've gained from cooking and using your abilities, should be enough for you to justify losing the health and defense from these items in exchange for the increased damage. Although you should check the scoreboard to see if the remaining players have built for burst damage. If they have, and they're strong enough, it might be a better idea to stick with the extra health to survive their burst and wear them down using your passive boosted healing items to outlast them. If the game is getting down to the final zone and there are still 3 or 4 other players beside yourself, it can be a good idea to exchange your chest piece for something more defensive like EOD suit or Amazonas armor if given the opportunity, since Xiukai is one of the more popular targets of tactical teaming. All of Xiukai's abilities cost health to cast instead of SP. Because of this, you should always put 1 point into your E right at the start of the game and use it to get around the area and complete your build faster. You also gain significant health mastery for spending HP on skills, so this will benefit you in the late game when the extra health from passive stacks and health mastery work together to give you a massive health pool. Because Xiukai doesn't use SP for his abilities, his base SP regen is 0.3, which is extremely low compared to every other character in the game, who all have base SP regens varying from 1 to 2.4. Because of this, you'll need to craft SP drinks early in the game so that you have enough SP to craft with, and carry a few with you in the mid to late game so that you can cook without having to stop and rest. When attacking an enemy by surprise, you should make sure to start casting your E as soon as your Q is cast. This way, you'll hit the target barely a moment after the Q lands, almost ensuring that they can't react to it. Xiukai's dash can go through walls, meaning there are many places where he is nearly entirely safe from most enemies. The biggest example is the river and pond. You can dash over the entire thing, forcing anybody attacking you to walk around the long way. At which point, you can simply dash back the other way, making it a very safe location to do lots of cooking. A couple locations in hospital can be jumped, as well as the entire wall at the corner of cemetery, factory, and hospital. When routing for any character, it's important to know what consumables you'll be crafting for early game healing. For Xiukai, you also need to consider what food you'll be cooking to farm up passive stacks. What you cook will be dependent on what zones you go through, what zones you end in, and when you'll have inventory space free for ingredients. Typically, you only want to commit 1 or 2 slots to ingredients early game because your first priority is completing your build. So what do you put in those 2 slots? The most value you can get for 1 inventory space regarding Xiukai passive is going to easily be lighters. Lighters are the most versatile cooking item in the game, except possibly bread. The big advantage that lighters have is that they enable a lot of multi-step recipes that will let you gain stacks multiple times. The simplest example is spicy fish stew. In order to craft spicy fish stew, you need to use a lighter with water to create boiling water. Since boiling water is a consumable, you gain passive stacks for making it. Then you combine boiling water with carp to make spicy fish stew. Since you get 3 boiling water per craft, 1 lighter will allow you to craft boiling water once and spicy fish stew 3 times, gaining you passive stacks 4 times. With your passive maxed out, this means you can gain 12 stacks of your passive for 1 lighter, or 36 stacks with a full stack of 3 lighters, taking up only 1 inventory space. 36 stacks equates to 288 extra max HP, which is further amplified by your health mastery, and 216 extra damage total on your ultimate. Since you can collect both water and carp in pond, carrying a stack of lighters with you will allow you to stack up a decent amount without committing a lot of inventory space to it if you go through pond on your route. Another example is fish and chips. You need lighters and oil for this one, but if you end up in Uptown on your route after starting somewhere with lighters, you can collect the oil there and still only commit 1 inventory slot to it. The recipe is a lighter combined with oil to make heated oil combined with cod to make fish cutlet, and heated oil combined with a potato to make french fries. You then combine the french fries and fish cutlet to make fish and chips. You gain 3 heated oil per craft, which does not give you passive stacks, but with 2 lighters and 2 oil, you can craft 3 fish cutlets and 3 french fries, and then combine them 3 more times into fish and chips. That means you can stack your passive 9 times for 2 lighters. This is very slightly more than spicy fish stew, which stacks 8 times for 2 lighters. But it requires oil, and since potatoes and cod are collected on opposite sides of the map, requires more inventory space and time to craft. Another big benefit of fish and chips though is that it is one of the best healing items you can get in the game. And when crafted by Xiukai, they restore a massive 1,170 health, ticking for 78 health per second. Once you've crafted the food you're going to use while fighting, it's time to stop thinking about the quality of consumables you're crafting and worry more about the number of crafts you can do. Sure, if you go to Uptown, you can get whiskey and carbonated water and make highballs. You could also take each of those and combine it with a lemon to make lemonade and cocktails for double the number of passive stacks. When crafting these, I suggest chugging as many as you can to top off your SP and then dropping the rest. The exact same thing can be done in Hotel. In fact, Hotel is one of the best areas for quickly stacking up Xiukai passive if it hasn't been completely looted. You can make lemonade and cocktails, and you can also find ice. The pool at the lower side of Hotel has several spots for collecting water, which can then be crafted with ice to make ice water. Since all of these items are green rarity, they only take 1 second to craft, meaning you can build a lot of stacks in a short amount of time. On top of that, ice water can then be taken to any location with ramen and be used to cook cold noodles for more stacks. Routing from Uptown to Beach to Hotel, once you have available inventory space, should allow you to build lots of stacks while keeping your SP topped off so you don't have to waste time resting. Another very valuable area for cooking is Pond. Besides being incredible for making spicy fish stew and being a very safe location for Xiukai, there are lots of consumables you can craft between Pond and its neighboring zones. Both Hospital and Avenue have milk, which can be crafted with sticks to make butter. Butter can then be crafted with potatoes that can be harvested in pond to create butter fried potatoes, which are also an excellent healing item. Butter can also be used with chocolate from Avenue to make chocolate chip cookies, another excellent healing item, or with bread to make pound cake. In pond, you can also gather oriental herbs and flowers to make orchids, which can be crafted with bottles from Avenue to make healing potions, giving you stacks 3 times and making a good amount of above average healing items. Hospital has ice and alcohol, which can both be easily combined with water from pond to make ice water and soju. Avenue has honey, which can be combined with water from pond to make honey water, and if you aren't able to make orchids for health potions, bottles can still be used to make bottled water for some easy stacks. If you have a lot of inventory space, or teammates willing to be pack mules for you, you can bring your boiling water from pond up to temple and into alley, collecting ramen and garlic as you go. Combining boiling water with ramen will make 2 hot ramen, which can each be combined with garlic to make garlic ramen. It is highly unlikely that you will find enough garlic to make all of it into garlic ramen, but this recipe gives the most passive stacks per lighter at 30 stacks per lighter with maxed passive. I almost never do this recipe though, because it also requires 3 ramen and 6 garlic. The amount of time and inventory you have to spend to gather all the materials is very rarely worth it and could be better used crafting other consumables. As a side note, garlic ramen becomes a better option when playing in squads. If you save a few boiling water and go into temple or alley, your teammates can help you find the ramen and garlic more quickly. You can then cook the garlic ramen to stack your passive while they farm the nearby animals for weapon mastery. Once you've built up all your stacks and gotten your endgame build, all that's left to do is show up to the final zone and press your high skill button.
3 final survivors remaining. Someone has eliminated half of the other test subjects. 2 last survivors remaining.
That's all the tips for this video. I'm working on another video that will go more in depth on how to build the maximum amount of passive stacks, including what to craft once it gets down to the final zone and your areas to collect ingredients are limited. So if you like this video or you're interested in that, leave a like and subscribe to see future videos as soon as they come out. I also stream 4 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/primesubtome. I'll put a link to that in the description below. Head over there, drop a follow to see when I go live. If you have any questions or if there are any specific builds you'd like to see a guide for, let me know in the comments.
Yeah! Okay, let's get cooking!